Action research can be very, very powerful in the educational world, and I would hope that some of you have had a chance to experience this either formally or informally in your classrooms. Action research is basically a systematic investigation or inquiry by the actual practitioners, the people who are in the classroom. So, for example, very often the teacher. So the person is actually conducting research with their students and with themselves as a subject. And the whole purpose of it is for improvement, information that's needed immediately for improvement. And that's why it's very common in educational settings. Really, a good teacher is doing action research every day on their feet. They just don't formalize it. There are a lot of benefits to this. So you have this culture of improvement when a school is involved in this sort of thing, and the decision making is getting made by the people who can most impact the students and who can benefit actually from the decisions that are made. It involves a lot of reflection and self-assessment, which is always good in our jobs as professionals. We've found too that action research can really promote a positive climate in a school or a grade level or something like that. And I think it has that and this immediate impact because it actually empowers the practitioners. We're not coming in with action research and saying, here's what you should do with your kids and follow these steps. Instead, we're coming in and saying, what can we do to support you as you improve things in your classroom, and what do you think as a professional would help your students the most? And that's very empowering and beneficial. This chart kind of compares action research to traditional research because you can't mix up the two. They're very, very different. You can see that with action research, your audience is usually very local. Action research gets published, you can see down below in the dissemination, sometimes in some practitioner magazines, but we're not doing action research to get publications or to further the research in a field. The setting is usually very small, very limited, the classroom or maybe sometimes a school, sometimes a grade level. All of the measures are teacher developed or things that are commonly used within the classroom. So they're not always validated. You could probably question how reliable they are because a teacher doing action research is probably not going to go to the point of running reliability and validity kind of analyses on the measures they use. The design is very almost always non-experimental. You're not going to divide your kids up and randomly select them for one thing and another. The process that's used for action research is really straightforward. Most often, a teacher or a group of teachers will have a topic or a focus or something they're really concerned about. And sometimes there's research done on other tools that have been used or what other people have done to address it, but that isn't really, really critical. The practitioner then determines the design and collects the data and analyzes, summarizes, but the whole purpose is to then take action. So if I do this in my classroom, will it help the students? And that's what I'm going to do to change my practice in the classroom. It's a dialectic kind of research. In other words, it adjusts and changes and reiterates in some kind of effort to arrive at reality or an answer. So you can see this, you identify the area of focus, but then when you start collecting data and developing a plan and analyzing it, goes back and forth and, oh, wonder if this will work, and you go back and forth quite a bit. So I talked about the process already. It's very personal and it's in control of the practitioner. So it's something that really matters to the practitioner. And so the design and data collection can be very idiosyncratic. it's usually qualitative. A teacher doesn't usually have the time or the expertise to run through quantitative types of analyses, and as there's not really an audience or advocating for change somewhere else, it's not really necessary. You will find that regardless of the fact that I apparently cannot spell illustrations, there are a lot of graphs and diagrams and important information like that when you do present this to someone. And you also need to think about what you're going to do next. So a practitioner is then obviously going to implement something or stop doing something. And I think the most valuable piece of this is when it gets communicated out, whether it's in conversations with other people in the grade level, presentations to a parent-teacher organization. Practitioner publications often publish action research if it's good and seems to be beneficial to the rest of the world, and conferences. But probably the most important conversation is with the administrator at the site. And with the new Nevada Educational Performance Framework, action research is one way where you could collect a lot of evidence for those evaluations. So some of you may want to consider that. When you're reading or consuming action research that's been done by someone else, you need to look, first of all, at the motivation of the researcher. And I remember reading one study, and I wasn't able to find it really quickly for you, but the researcher was told to do this action research. That's not action research. That means that you're doing an evaluation of a program, and you have a stakeholder, and you're being mandated for something. There needs to be a consistency, though, when you read action research between the questions that the teacher really has and the methods. It's rather amazing when you read and a teacher says, I've got this question in mind, and here's how I'm going to gather data, and you're kind of scratching your head as to how that data will help you answer that question. It can be really interesting. I've had to review a lot of action research over the years within the district for different projects that we've done, and it is amazing that people really seem to struggle between what kind of data would be appropriate. Multiple data is always good when you're doing action research, multiple types. And you want to let it be kind of emergent and cyclical and going back and forth. If, when you're critiquing someone's action research, if there's actually external monitoring or feedback, that also can be really, really valuable in helping a person. Sometimes you get so into the thick of things that you can't see or you don't notice what's going wrong or what might be a better way to handle things. So I'd encourage any of you, if you have the opportunity to do some action research, to jump in and do this in your classroom. It will benefit your practice, it'll benefit you as a teacher, and it will definitely benefit your students.